Hi everyone, welcome and come on in. We'll just give everybody a moment to join. I can see we've still got people joining us from wherever they've been. So just make yourself comfortable. Check out the webinar platform while you've got a moment. We will be using the chat throughout to ask questions and also to ask some questions of you. So make sure you're familiar with it. We'll just give people another few seconds and then we'll be underway. All right, it looks like most people are here. So hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or maybe good evening, wherever in the world you are. Really good to see you here. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day and spending it with us. My name is Petra Davidson. I head up marketing at Panzura, and I have a couple of people I would like you all to meet. So Raul Sanchez is our global head of sales engineering. His is the team that designs your Panzura solution, make sure it's built and configured in size just right for your environment. And Raul will be doing most of the speaking today. Also, Nick Prill is one of our product managers. He's in charge of Panzura Edge. He knows this product inside and out, and he's here to help answer any questions that you have, and you can type those into the chat as we go along. So from all of us, welcome to today's webinar on Panzura Edge. Sync, share, and securely access files anywhere. Edge is a solution we are so pleased to be able to show you today. We know it's something you've been waiting on, the ability to extend truly performant and very secure file access to your users wherever they are, on whatever device they're using. And of course, so many of you here today work frequently with other companies on projects. So extending that same file access outside of your firm on a restricted basis without compromising security, visibility, or performance is a big deal. And that's what Panzura Edge is about. It's a solution to extend the reach of CloudFS while keeping your files safe, protected, visible, compliant, and with all of the speed that you're used to. Now, just before I hand over to Raul, I have a couple of questions for you to get a feel for what your file sharing environment looks like right now. I'm just going to pop the first one of those into the chat. And the first one is, how are you giving your own team members file access right now? If they're working remotely or they're on mobiles or they're completely out of the office. Are you using CloudFS and that does you? Have you got an integrated file sharing solution, or are you using something external like a Dropbox? And it looks like the external solution is what most of you are using. It's kind of what we expected. Okay, no, we're evening up a little bit. Okay, super. Now, same question, but this time for how are you giving users who are in other companies access to those files? The same set of options for answers. And if there's something, if you do something that we haven't allowed an answer for, then just pop that in the chat. Just gives us a great idea of what you're working with right now. So again, you're using external solutions by and large. Okay, super. Look, that's a really great benchmark for us, really useful. Thank you. And Raul, I'm going to hand it over to you.
All righty. Thank you so much. Petra, can you hear me okay?
We can. You're all good.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you again. Good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Raul Sanchez. I head up the pre-sales engineering group here at Panzura. I'd like to start off by echoing what Petra said initially. We want to say thank you. We know that you all have tremendous demands on your time. We know there are many things that require your attention. You chose to spend here with us, so we want to be good stewards and say thank you and provide value for you guys this morning. So let's start first by talking about why are we here to present a solution that extends access to information outside of your environment. I wanted to begin by talking about the landscape we find ourselves in today. As most of you may know or have experienced this yourself, information has never been more important. I would argue, and many of you may agree, that after people, information is probably a company's most important asset, and it has to be protected. We don't just require information to function. We rely on it to do our jobs and just for basic communication and to go about our daily lives. It is absolutely critical that information is available to us. Now, in addition to being super important for our daily functions, there's a very high expectation in terms of when the information is available. We want it available to us when we need it, where we need it, performant and consistent. This has to be something that's not just a nice to have. This is an expectation. This is a requirement. Now, to further complicate this landscape, now we have the third factor, which is growth. With growth comes cost. And these three combined factors in this environment today really are posing challenges for many customers and many of our customers in terms of how they manage their information into their environment and how they provide information to users outside of their organization. That's part of what we're going to discuss this morning. Now, as most of you, I believe all of you, are current Panzura customers, I want to say thank you for your business. And you're all familiar with CloudFS as the core part of our portfolio, right? CloudFS is your global file system, and this is really what takes care of your global file system. This is your ransomware resiliency. This is your immutable file system. This is your global collaboration mechanism. This is the core of our product. Now, with the current configuration of CloudFS, when you need to extend the reach of CFS to a user or to groups in other parts of the organization, you typically would deploy a new node or a new filer in some other location. Today, if you want to get access to users outside the organization, you have to set up a VPN connection. Now, the question I have here is, what happens if you want to provide access to your information within a global file system without requiring a third-party solution where you have to actually now transfer information to and from a third-party information solution, or VPN is not available? Or what if you have a user that's very far remote and you don't even have a reliable connection available? Can that be done? Another question that may come up is, if I were to provide that type of information outside my organization, what exposure am I bringing to that information, right? My information is valuable. There are bad actors that want to access that information and use it for this advantage. Well, that's why we're here to discuss this today. And this is Panzura Edge. In its core essence, Panzura Edge was designed to provide access to your global file system to remote users in a secure, performant, consistent manner so they can consume this information on any device in any format they like at any time consistently. Right. So think of the concept of, if I want access to my information within my global file system, within my single source of truth, I want users outside of my environment to access it. This is what Panzura Edge was designed to do. So let's take just a quick moment and let's review the Panzura Solutions portfolio. So let me grab my trusty pen here. As I mentioned before, CloudFS is the core of our operations. This is the backbone of our solutions. And this can be consumed depending on your environment, whether it's in the public cloud, in a private cloud, on premises. In most cases, usually this is a hybridized deployment. Today, some of you, or hopefully all of you, are consuming Panzura Data Services, and this is your single portal for your search, audit, analytics capabilities. Detect and Rescue is a feature set that we're bringing in to enhance Panzura Data Services. I believe we'll probably have a subsequent webinar on this specific feature set, so stay tuned for that. But today we're going to focus on Panzura Edge as a solution and how it works in tandem with CloudFS to provide this anytime, anywhere file access for your users outside the environment. Now, one recurring theme you're going to hear us talking about is security. We want to be able to provide remote access to your information in a synchronized, performant, and secure manner. We don't want to compromise on some of the IT postures or requirements for your data security, whether the information is inside the environment or outside the environment. So the goal here is to maintain that security and that control while providing collaboration and mobility. So leads me into the next question. So why do this? Well, to put it simply, data should be mobile. We need to be sure that information can be available on any device your team's required in terms of accessing their information. The reason for this is we want to produce environments where you have better options for collaboration, not just within your organization, not just limited to a virtual private network, but outside those two parameters as well, without requiring a third-party application where you now have to move information from global file system to something else. I think several of you mentioned Dropbox as a possible option. And that's kind of what we want to discuss in terms of use cases today. Now, the AutoCAD viewing is something that's very specific to AutoCAD applications and Revit as an example. I'll review this in more detail when I show you guys the technical version of this webinar, when I show you how this actually functions and what is the benefit for these types of applications. And lastly, again, to repeat the recurring theme here is data control. We need to make sure that we have security, make sure it's across the organization, make sure we extend this outside the organization in the event that we share this information beyond the firewall. All right. I'm going to pause here for just a moment and take a look at this diagram. What I want you to take away from this is we are able to provide a service. Panzura Edge runs as a service within your organization. It runs in parallel to CloudFS. And this is how we're able to provide a VPN-less or a no VPN connection to your remote users. The benefit here is people outside the organization are able to view their information from within the global file system. We can maintain our ransomware resiliency, our immutability. They can view this information without necessarily having to exit that information from within the environment. Now, there is an option if they choose to make changes to it on the go remotely that they can do that through the portal. We'll talk about that a little bit later as I show you the demonstration. So, as we mentioned before, Panzura Edge and Panzura CloudFS are designed to work in collaboration. So, as you're familiar with it today, you guys have complete control over your encryption keys. But CFS or CloudFS handles all of your immutability, your deduplication, your compression, data locality, all that is handled automatically within the global file system. What Edge is designed to do is, in the event of the need to share this information outside the organization, we want to put certain parameters and certain checks in place so you have full control and you can set the scope of what third-party collaborators or partners are able to do or view with your information that you're choosing to share outside your organization. For example, there's a few different items here of what we can do within the portal, and we'll show you this during the technical demonstration. But just to name a few of these, you can set a limit in terms of how many times a user can download the information. You can set a password. You can determine whether or not someone can view the data or whether they can view and download the information. You know, we do support two-factor authentication. So one thing that I want to focus on here is, again, back on security. This does require Active Directory credentials to log into the portal to get to this information. And as you would expect, we have end-to-end encryption for every bit of transaction within this portal, right? So again, a lot of this we're going to show you specifically like the watermark when I can say this is a protected document, and we'll show you how that automatically shows up during the preview portion of the demonstration. All right, now as you are familiar with CloudFS in terms of file locking and the way we do global data integrity within the global system. Many of you are familiar with how our file locking technology works. And this is a little bit different from byte range locking, which is that collaboration technology that allows two different users to access the same file at the same time to work collaboratively. This is a bit different. And for those of you that may not have seen or have not focused on this a little bit, let me give you a little bit of a recap. So global file locking, or what we call the global read-write permission, GRW, what happens is when a user opens up one of the objects within the file system and they're modifying it, when user B wants to access that information, the system will automatically notify user B that that file is opened by user A and gives them two options. You can read the information or you can be notified when it's available for modification. When user A completes their work, they save the document, they close it. Now the administrative control or that global read-write permissions can be transferred to user B so they can now modify that document. The ability for us to move that administrative action between the different files is part of the core technology, but this today is a seamless operation. It's automatic within CloudFS. It doesn't require any kind of user interaction. This is going to be available within Edge, but it functions a little bit differently. Think of this more of like a check-in or a check-out methodology. So as an example, if you're working on a specific document and you want to ensure that there's no chance someone can come in and either download the document or overwrite your change and upload a different version to prevent version collisioning, you do have the ability, as you can see on the screen here, is you can set a lock on the specific file. You can set an expiration date if you know for a fact that this is going to be a multi-hour or a multi-day job. And to be absolutely certain that no one can download another copy, so we can avoid version collision, you can actually prevent this from being downloaded entirely from within the Edge portal. So you have control in terms of how you actually protect this information while you're making changes to the document. Now, for the administrator and us, we're probably thinking, what happens if a user locks a document, forgets to set an expiration date, walks away, goes on vacation, forgets to unlock it? Any scenario could happen. Well, as you would expect, from within the administrative portal, which we're going to show you today, you have the ability to release locks. You'll have a list of all the different documents that actually have a lock applied to them, who actually locked the file, so you can use this as a coaching opportunity. But we can also release those locks as well to put the file back into circulation. All right, let's talk about something that is going to be one of the core features of how Panzura Edge was designed. Now, the purpose of this application is to provide access to your users outside the environment without a VPN. So we understand that in many cases, sometimes users that want to get to, that have, let's say, a role where it requires them to go and inspect a new project, a new build site, an oil platform, something that's very, very remote, are going to be taking pictures, they're going to be modifying documents, and they need the ability to take that information and re-upload that via the portal back into the global file system so that their coworkers can view this information and begin the collaboration or the work process. The challenge is today with most solutions, if you have a poor or severed net connection and you're doing a file transfer, what happens? You have to do a retransmit. So if you have, let's say, a multi-gig or a multi-hundred megabyte file and you're doing this upload into the system and that connection is severed, you've got to do this all over again. So we've tried to mitigate that by breaking up that upload into smaller 20 megabyte chunks, right, while tracking the progress of that upload. So for example, let's say you're uploading a 1 gig file. If that upload becomes interrupted, worst case, you're going to retransmit about 20 megabytes of information, right, as a retransmit, but you don't have to start from scratch. Because we're tracking the progress of that upload, it'll start off, let's say you stopped at 50%, it'll resume the upload at that 50% and continue that process until you've uploaded that information. It's just one of the ways that Edge tries to optimize your workflow. Okay, let's talk about how do we deploy this. So as I mentioned before, Edge was designed to run as a service that is hosted within your environment that runs in parallel or in collaboration with CloudFS, okay? Now, very similar to CloudFS, this can be deployed on premises. It can be deployed as a service in your cloud provider of choice. We do have layered security, and we do have an administrative web portal that you can use for administration. But again, this is a separate service that runs within the organization that provides this extension outside the firewall that collaborates with CloudFS, right? Now, depending on the size of your organization and how many remote users you want to support, we do have scale-out reference architectures available, as well as high availability architectures to make sure we have max redundancy across the organization, not just for CloudFS, but for the Edge platform as well. All right, so that is the baseline for Edge that I wanted to show today. I think from here, if we'll take a quick moment, I'm going to pause and I'm going to transition to the actual portal itself to show you how the interdependency works with Edge and some of the speed and some of the use cases of how we're actually able to use the platform. So bear with me for just one moment. I'm going to stop screen sharing here just very, very briefly, and I'll bring up the actual portal.
And while Raul is doing that, just a reminder, I'm the product manager for Edge here at Panzura. And if you have any questions as we're going through, please go ahead and post those in the chat. We'll answer them in real time or potentially save them for some Q&A at the end. So.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nick. Okay. So what I'm doing here is I've spun up an environment where I can show you where I've got Edge services actually running. And I want to show you the collaboration or the interdependency between CloudFS and the portal to show how quickly the information propagates from a share on a specific node within the global file system and appears within the portal itself. So let me log in here. By the way, we do support single sign-on instance if that is a requirement for the company. Let me log in and I will show you how quickly information will show on the portal. And I apologize for the size of this browser. As soon as I show this portion of the demonstration, we'll switch over to a different browser that'll give us a full screen so we can better appreciate the actual portal. Before I give you a tour of the entire system, what I do want to highlight here is we have multiple ways you can consume Edge. You can use a web browser on literally any device. So whether it's a mobile phone, whether it's a tablet or it's a PC, you can use a browser to access Edge. And that web URL that you choose can be customized. We also have the ability for an Apple or an iOS or an Android application or a desktop application that you can use as well to have this installed on your mobile device on your desktop as well. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate into the network share. We'll talk more about the root share and how this is set up here in just a minute. From an administrative perspective, I have view to every user within the portal within this environment today. But from a user perspective, what they would see is just their username and whatever user groups that they would be they have access to. The way this functions is the share that's actually exposed to Edge is entirely controlled by the administrator. So by default, Edge does not have view to the entire folder directory. So if there are sensitive folders with certain documents that should not be on the Edge portal, you don't share them with the Edge portal. You have complete control. And this is in cooperation along with your Active Directory accounts. You have to have an authentication account available, as well as rights and permissions for different users and groups. So all those two different things apply for users to access their version of their information or their authorized information within the portal. Okay, so let's go down to my profile here. And what I want to show you, hopefully you can see it, I'm sorry it's a bit small, is the folder structure here in terms of the structure of the folders and the documents themselves are a duplicate of the two. This right here is mapped directly to my CloudFS share, and this is what the portal is showing. It's the same information. Up here at the top, this is just documents that I've uploaded into my Windows Explorer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this information, I'm going to drag it directly into my share on my CloudFS node. This will do a quick file. Now this will update automatically, but just to speed up the process, I'm going to go ahead and refresh the browser view. And what you're going to see is those new documents that I just imported or copied over appear in the portal. They're highlighted in black because this is the most recent change. So the documents that I just uploaded are now in the portal, and it's just that fast. This is the same type of performance you would expect, whether it's a tablet, whether it's a PC, whether it's a mobile device. As long as you have an internet connection, the performance between these two is actually quite quick. In fact, Petra may share a little bit later how fast she's actually able to access her information from her Edge portal. And she's, I think, what is it, Petra, over 13 hours away from the source of the information by plane. Is that right?
Yeah, 13 and a half hours flying time. That's right.
Yeah, so when I say this provides true global reach for this information without a VPN constraint, Petra is our testimony for this. All right, so this is just a quick show of how you can move information into the portal. Now, this is designed to be very user-friendly. It's very intuitive. So you can drag and drop. You can create new files and folders. Let me take a moment. I'm going to take this off my screen for just a quick moment so I can show you guys the actual browser so we have a better view of the screen space. So one moment here, and I'll log in to the user interface. Okay, you should be able to see my screen now. Let me know if this comes up. All right. Can everybody see my screen?
No. Oh, there you go.
Okay, wonderful. All right, let me log in back in the exact same portal we were just working on. It looks like it's a bit small, so let me go ahead and maximize this a bit. Is that easier to read? Okay, wonderful. So again, this is the browser version in terms of how we consume the information. So going back into network shares, just as a reminder, the actual shares that you're determining can be from a specific file or the specific file system from within the global file system, right? You can designate the specific share you're going to expose while keeping everything else secured. So let's go into the documents themselves that we've shown here to show you what's available in terms of sharing and some of the capabilities within just the browser itself. So let me use, I think it was this new test document that I wanted to show you. So let's do a preview of the document, and I can do this by simply clicking on it, and it's going to bring up a preview version of the file. So I wanted to use this specific file because it's just a blank screen with some text, but you can see here there is a watermark that automatically applies to that document, denoting that this is a protected document. This watermark is completely customizable to your company and to your logo, so you can make changes to this as you need, and I can show you this from the administrative portal. Now, this is just a viewer. Now, let's say you have a necessity to not just view the information, but you need to interact with a specific document. Now, in the case of Microsoft applications, if you have a Office license or 365 license from within the browser itself, you can't open this as it will automatically sync with your Office application, apply the license, and open this into a actionable version of this document. So now I have PowerPoint in a browser where I can go through and make changes to the document itself. This will actually save it, and I can go ahead and close this document and then go back in and make changes into my environment. I think this is here. Close this out. I'll change the viewer. Let's update this here real quick. And again, this happens automatically. I'm just refreshing to try to keep this moving along as quickly as possible. So this is how you would interact with documents within the portal itself. Now, let's talk about the file locking I was mentioning earlier. Let's say I want to make a change to this new test document and I want to apply a lock. Here's where you actually go through and set, I want to apply a lock. I want to give it an expiration date. Or if I want to be certain no one can download this to create a duplicate copy on an upload, I can actually prevent it from being downloaded. So anybody that has access to any of the shared folders that has access to this information would see, let me apply this without an expiration. You'll see actually that icon is now denoted with a lock sub icon to show that this has been a locked file. Later on, I'll show you from the administrative portal, I can go through and actually remove that lock from the file itself. All right, let's jump into some of the shared capabilities of the portal. Let me choose this document again. Now let's go into some of the sharing. Hopefully you guys can read that on my screen. Does that look okay? Good, okay. So you can modify the share link to something that makes sense if you prefer, depending on what the document is called. I can change the share name of the document before I share this out. I can actually set an expiration date. So if you want to say there is a specific document with a specific time limit because of certain security parameters, after such and such date it's not available to view, you can control that from the portal. I can restrict the number of downloads. If download is even an option, I can say you can download it one time or multiple times depending on your specific situation. I can configure email notifications. I can keep this very broad. I can allow anybody with a link, copy this, pop it into a browser, and I can access this information without any kind of a password or security. I can determine if they can view and download that document or if they can view it only. So whether you're working with customers or with third-party partners, if you're trying to collaborate on a design or a specific project, you have complete control over how you choose to show this information outside your corporate structure, outside your local network. I can set a password. And again, note whether it's going to be a view and download or view only. Because again, we do integrate with Active Directory, you can invite AIDA users directly in here to come in and invite them directly to view a file. In fact, what happens is if I add Nick, he'll receive an email into his inbox that says the user A has wanted to share this document with you, and it'll give you a notification with a direct link into the portal itself. Now, the last feature that I want to show you that wasn't part of the presentation because it's actually relatively new, and this is something that we're very excited about for specific use cases. We have the ability to implement digital rights management within the browser, within the portal itself. Now, what that does is, let's say you have a specific situation where there's a document that's highly sensitive. Maybe it's a new design, a new technology, and there's a requirement to collaborate with, let's say, a partner or a co-designer with this document. And sending this information is not an option, right? You want to be able to share it, but you want to limit the view, and you want to apply security that prevents anyone from either duplicating, sharing this information, or even taking screen captures. So what we do is we're going to enable what's called protected view. I'm going to set a password. Very simple here. I'm going to save this information, and I'm going to copy the link. Now, just for the purpose of the demonstration, I'm going to open up an incognito window just to show this is a new instance. We're going to apply the link, and then this will show you a link to the Edge and require the password that we just set. Now, once you log into this protected version of the portal, give it a few seconds. It'll generate the image. And then when it's ready to view, click on view, and you'll see this document pop into the portal. So we'll give it just a moment. As it renders, what you're going to notice is there is an aperture, a predefined aperture for that document where everything else has been obscured. So it is impossible for someone to go through and actually view this information. The documents or the graphics within the aperture are now visible. So if there is a document that needs to be read or a schematic that needs to be reviewed, you can go through and move the aperture around to view that document in pieces, right? But you can't see the entire document. Can't share it, can't take a screen capture. Or you could take a screen capture, but you're not going to get very much, I suppose. Right? So the idea here is this is part of our digital rights management solution, for documents that need to be shared outside the organization, or simply transferring that information or moving it outside the org is not an option. So think of new design, engineering schematics, perhaps financial documents. There's a couple of different use cases why we think this will be useful. Now, to remove that, I can simply, after all this process, I can simply remove the share, cancel my operations, and come right back into the files, into the Edge portal. All right. I think we're doing pretty good on time. One thing that I want to come back to is what I talked about before was the AutoCAD previewer, which is specific to AutoCAD and Revit applications. So let me jump into our projects folder. I'm going to start with AutoCAD, and this is pretty cool. And I want you guys to remember what you're seeing here is from a browser. This can be done from a phone. This can be done from a tablet. It can be done from a PC. So let me go and open up the schematic. By default, the very first time you open up any of these schematics in the browser, it will take a minute or so for this to load. But once you've viewed this before, the re-render or the provisioning is extremely, extremely fast. As you saw, this came up in just a couple of seconds. So the default view here is going to be a two-dimensional view. We have the ability to go into a 3D view of this document, and it's going to show you, and again, I'm not an expert on this platform, so many of you are familiar with the viewer. You can go through and you can navigate the structure itself. You can zoom in, you can zoom out, you can highlight different components. You can set your orbit axis, you can move around the environment. I can do a first-person walkthrough if I like of this environment and walk through the diagram. We also have the ability, if I want to remove that, we also have the ability to go through and actually explode the model. So if you want to see the different components that actually incorporate this design, I can zoom out, and then I can move around and inspect this document whichever way that I like. And again, this is being done from the browser. You can do this on a mobile phone, If we have time at the end of the webinar, I'll see if I can fire up a mobile device and show you how this actually looks on a phone device as well. I think it's pretty neat. So this is going to be specific to AutoCAD. So let me close this. Now, if you want to interact with this and you want to download the document, you would have to download this onto a PC that actually has the application available to make changes to it. But again, this is just for viewing outside the organization. So let's say you're going to a project, you're going to review the schematics and the structure, you want to verify that the components are as designed, and you're physically looking at it. You can view it very quickly on your mobile device to collaborate that what was designed is what exactly is being designed and built. All right, let me get back in here and let me look at a Revit model. So let's look at a sample structure here. Now, Revit's a little bit different as this is coming up. This one by default will render in 3 dimensions to begin with. It takes a little bit extra seconds to render because it's a pretty complex drawing. But same as before, if I want to come through and zoom in, I can come through into the building itself. I can walk around. I can view the different components. I also have the ability, again, to explode this out so I can see the different components for the structure, depending on the complexity, depending on what it is I'm trying to view. And again, this is from a browser. This doesn't require high-powered devices to actually be able to accomplish this type of viewership for these documents. Okay. So that is the core of what I really wanted to show you from the Edge portal. Let me take a moment. I'm going to jump into the administrative portal. I'm not sure if there's any questions in the chat. Nick, if you want to take a quick look while I switch over to the administrative portal and show you some of the capabilities that's available from that portal.
Yeah, we've been answering the questions real time.
Wonderful. Oops, guys, this is the hazard of too many passwords. You type in the wrong one.
One question did come up in the chat about logging. Raul, I think you are going to show the audit log here in the admin interface. Yeah,
great question. Yes, absolutely. We do have logging available within the portal itself. And I'll speak to how it differs a little bit from logging and audit logging within the actual global file system in the CloudFS environment. So we're logging in here. This is the administrative dashboard for Edge. The information on the dashboard is what you would expect. This shows you kind of data consumption over time, users in the system itself, how many files, how many shares, all the information I would expect. What I find useful here is I can see by region who's accessing the portal, and how many extra visits we have. And we do a breakdown of actual file types that are actually being exposed from CFS through Edge to the users. I can see who are my most active players, and I can see what are the different formats that are being used to actually access this information, which is pretty handy. From an administrative perspective, if I go into the user section, this is where I would create users and give them access to the portal. So this is 2 different functions, right? You're going to have an Active Directory account, and you're going to have a user account within Edge itself to make sure you have access to that information. We have the integration between the 2, so your rights and permissions would carry through. Now, here is where we have the ability to create whether you have full access or partial access to this information. Now, you can also set up groups as well. What I wanted to show you here is the network share. This is where you would determine specifically which filer within the global file system and which specific share I want to present into the Edge environment. So as you can tell from our specific environment, the one that I'm using here is on this node, and this is the root share, and all the subfolders are available after that. Under management here for user share, this is where I can determine and find out if there was a action that one of my users took on a specific file, and I can choose to either override or remove that entirely. So if they should have had a password applied, or if it shouldn't have been shared in the first place, here's as an administrator, I have more control over this information. Under device management, this is interesting because this will actually show you which users accessing the environment, what is the device that they're using, what is the version, when was the access time, and if they shouldn't have access or temporarily had to be restricted, I can actually block their access directly from the portal from this view here. Now, going down to the audit question, because I think there's a question regarding logging and how we can actually show the history. So for those of you that have Panzura Data Services, you're aware that CloudFS actually does provide audit logs. Data Services actually is able to take those logs and use them to showcase, I believe, up to 13 different types of activities on the objects themselves in terms of user interaction. So whether there's a read, whether there's a write, there's a create, there's a move, etc. All that is available within Data Services. Edge has a different set of logging capabilities as well. So this is specific to the actions within the specific portal. So for example, if I want to go through and I want to filter by user and a specific activity, I have that information which will show me the message was what object I was interacting with, what was the IP, what was my agent, and when it was I actually took that action. So we do have audit logging from within the portal specific to Edge activities. Hopefully that answers the question. And again, you can get much more detail with this. And by the way, just so everybody's aware, if you hopefully like what you're seeing here, if you want more information and you want a more specific demonstration for your use case, maybe more technical or a bit slower pace, just because for the time constraints, please get with Nick, get with Petra, get with myself. We'll provide our contact information. We're absolutely happy to come and do a demonstration for yourself, for your team, and talk through how Edge may be something that could be used in your environment. Especially if you're using something like, let's say, for example, a third party to share that information outside. You have to manage multiple types of demos and silos, and you want to not have to transfer information out of your global file system into a different solution. This is what we want to provide for you if it's something of interest. Okay. Let's go down to user locks. This is the location that, for example, remember I set that lock earlier? I actually kept the file and I left it on. This is where if I want to remove it, I can go through and release this lock. Now I've canceled my lock. If I go back into the portal, you see that that document is not available to be modified, and it can be downloaded and viewed during the normal workflow. All right, let's see here. The other thing I wanted to showcase under settings, if you look under authentication, we do have the ability to support different types of authentication depending on your security parameters. We also have the ability to showcase the watermark. So as I mentioned before, this is customizable. So if you want to have something that says your company confidential, do not share, whatever it is your security parameters require, here's where you'd make the change. Now, one thing that is also cool about Edge is that we do provide the ability to do a co-branding. So for example, if you wanted to say you want to provide Edge, you want to consume it, but you want it to be your company logo and your information presented through the Edge portal through CFS, we provide that option as well through the license subscription, through the licensing option as well. Okay, so this is in essence what we wanted to share today. This is why Edge was created. This is the use case. You've had kind of a very quick tour over the administrative portal and the user portal as well. Thank you again for your time. I'll hand this back over to Nick and Petra. If there's a couple extra questions that we'd like to have answered, happy to do that at this time. I'm going to work on something to see if I can share a snippet of what it looks like on a mobile device. So if you guys will bear with me, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a second and I'll be right back. Petra, back to you.
All right. Thanks, Raul. Nick, I wondered if there's, I saw a couple of questions in here about drive letter access and so on. And I wondered if there was a little bit you could speak to about that. And whilst you're doing that, everybody, we've got a couple of handouts. I'll load those up and we'll get Nick to dig into some of those questions a little deeper.
Yeah, thanks, Petra. So some questions just around drive letter mappings and the user experience outside of the office. And today, the desktop client maps very similar to what the Dropbox client does. You end up with a Panzura Edge folder, whether it be in Finder on the Mac or in Windows Explorer on the Windows PC. So there is a little bit of a different user experience from an in-office versus out-of-office perspective, where they would need to access those, not from their traditional drive letter mappings. That said, the scalability of the solution, we do have customers that are actually even moving, some of their users away from the drive letter mappings and using the Edge interface natively for all of the access, whether it be in office or out of office. But we have heard, this feature request from several different customers, and we are looking at the possibility of being able to extend that sync client to a drive letter mapping to make that a bit more seamless. And it's something that our development team and engineering team is looking at. So stay tuned. We hope to have an update on that over the next couple of months.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you. So for anybody who hasn't seen it, excuse me, there's a couple of handouts loaded there for you. Just grab a copy of those. If ever you have any questions after this, or while Raul's working on his mobile demo, just either get in touch with your account manager, or you can hit reply to any of those invite emails that you got for this webinar. Those will come to me directly, and I'll make sure they get to the right place. Raul, how are we going with the mobile?
We are back. One second, right. I'll bring up my screen. Okay. Hopefully you guys can see this.
Let's give it a moment. There we go.
All right, wonderful. Hopefully I also will be bombarded by notifications on my cell phone. So what I'm doing here is I'm basically just screencasting my Android device onto my laptop so you guys can see what this interface looks like. So as we noted before, we do actually have a mobile device, a mobile version of Panzura application. So you can see here on my screen right here that we actually have Panzura Edge. I've actually already have it up and running, and I have it installed so I can show it to you. So the first thing I'm going to show you is what the interface looks like directly from within a mobile device. It's the same type of functionality. It's very quick. If I were to, let's say, go on a job site, do an inspection of a specific build, take a picture, I can do an upload into the portal directly. It will go back into CloudFS. All the functionality is exactly the same. It's exactly as you would expect. And this is in live on my phone at the moment. Very quick to use. Okay. Now, what I did want to show you, though, is a little bit different. And this is the browser, just to show that the experience between the browser and the application in terms of performance is very, very similar. But this is something that's interesting. I've gone ahead and logged into the browser. As you can tell here, this is the actual URL. So I'm actually logged into our specific instance. And I'm looking at the project folder. So I'm looking at, I think this is the AutoCAD function, the AutoCAD projects right now. So let's go back into that. I think it's the same one I was looking at before to showcase how I can actually do the view from my phone. Now, this is the first time I'm actually rendering this. I think I picked a different one. So it shows that I actually have the ability to show a three-dimensional image of the project from my mobile device. So I can zoom out a little bit so I can see it. I can move it around. I can manipulate it depending on what I want to do. So I have control over this, which is pretty neat. So from my mobile device, again, this is the first time I'm looking at it. If I go into the device, I can do the same type of viewer navigation that you saw before. If I want to go through, if I actually want to explode this out to see the model, how it's composed, I can do that as well. So same functionality from my mobile device, which I thought was pretty neat. Now, not to be left out, let's take a look at Revit. So let me bring a sample structure. I think this is the same example that I was just using a few minutes ago. And again, this is in live on my browser, on my cell phone. All I'm using here is a basic Wi-Fi connection. Very simple. But you can see I'm actually able to render this on my mobile device. Use case, if I'm in this building, depending on where I am in the build, if I want to go through, I want to take a look at something to make sure it's according to the schematic, I can do a virtual walk just as before. And just as before, I can go through and actually explode this if I want to see the different components for that build. This requires a lot of tracking of different individual objects. I can zoom in, I can move it around, I can zoom out, but I have the same type of capability from my mobile device, my tablet, as I do from my PC, just to showcase the power of what this platform can do from just the browser itself. Okay, so with that, that is what I had to present today. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. Again, as we mentioned, we know that you guys have lots of demands on your time and you chose it to spend with us. We want to say thank you. We appreciate it. Hopefully this was valuable information. Hopefully this piques your interest. I'm not sure if there's more questions, but in either case, I'll stay on. Otherwise, I'll hand it back over to Petra.
All right. Thank you, Raul. Guys, if you have any more questions, please just fire them into the chat. We're very, very happy to answer anything that you have. And by the way, thank you very much for asking Nick questions about things that it sounds like we're working on. Nick and I will have a chat after this, and we'll make sure that we understand exactly what's involved and when we might be able to get that to you, because it seems like some of these things are well worth doing. Nick, how about rather than typing at this stage, maybe we can just talk to some of these questions. That'd be super.
Perfect. Yeah.
That's a great idea.
So a question on search capabilities. So today you can search in the platform across file name and return, the file, any files, you can search by, date modified, a lot of things within the metadata of the file. We do have a roadmap item to bring more of a deep content search, indexing of the actual content of documents. That we expect to bring out either later this year or the beginning of next year. Question on product availability. Yes, Edge is available today. We'd be happy to do a more personalized demo with you and get you in touch with your account team to get you some more information on that. Petra, I think that catches us up with questions.
That might be it. All right, guys, we have one more question for you, and it's just about how you found this webinar. So if you wouldn't mind answering this final poll, don't hold back. We want to make sure that the information that we're giving you is what you need to know. And also, if there are any other topics that you'd like us to cover immediately, don't hesitate to let us know. I'm working on an entire schedule, which will really start from Panzura 101 all the way through to technical capabilities. So if you have any specific requests, I would love to hear them. And it looks like we are done. So Nick and Raul, thank you very much. And to everybody who attended, thank you. Really appreciate you taking the time. We hope this has been worthwhile for you. We have recorded this. The recording takes a little while to render, and so we'll get that to you. Sometimes it can take up to a day to get it finalized, but as soon as it's available, I'll have it out to all of you. And to those who asked about people who weren't able to attend, I'll make sure they get a copy as well. Thank you very much again, and enjoy the rest of your day. Much appreciated.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.